Marker. And action.
This podcast is being recorded at the Motion Picture Institute, the oldest film school in Michigan, training the next generation of filmmakers today. Check out the website motionpicture.edu and schedule a tour now. All right, guys, welcome back to the show. Today I have Paige Erlich. She started her filmmaking career in 2008 with a camcorder and a dream. She graduated MPI in 2012, winning Best Thesis Film, and has since gone on to direct nearly 500 films and videos for clients including Penske, multi-platinum and Grammy-nominated singer Aloe Blacc, and Kelly, a $4 billion global staffing company, where she served as brand storyteller and resident filmmaker for 4 years. She founded Paige Erlich Productions in 2014, won a slew of awards, including multiple additional Tellys, Marcoms, Hermes Creative, Summit International, and more. Now, 2024, she's launched Skywriter Studios, which makes life story and family legacy films that can be passed down for future generations. Paige, it is a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, without further ado, let's talk motion picture. So I wanted to start off simple and ask you, can you share a bit about your journey into filmmaking? There's a kind of incredible part of you being a DJ in Europe. So how does a DJ in Europe become a established filmmaker in the Metro Detroit area?
I think it starts, first of all, with being a storyteller. And being a DJ was a way of storytelling. And even before that, my first natural storytelling talent that I discovered was writing. I wrote poems from the age of a small child. And so my creative evolution was kind of like it went from writing into, when I got into the business world, I got into sales, and then I got into event production, which was creating experiences for people that were like stories that they lived in. And moved into the music world, where I wrote some music, produced some music, but for the most part was a DJ. And my 10-year DJ career culminated in a 3-year stint in Berlin, where I traveled and DJed all over Europe and was resident DJ for Mini.
Wow.
Best known for Mini Cooper. So I played at their A-level auto shows in Paris, Frankfurt, Geneva, and Detroit. So my first trip home as a DJ was, when I moved to Berlin, was working as a DJ, which is really fun. And I loved it. Like, I loved every second of it, and I couldn't have imagined moving back home. But I was homesick a lot. And one of the ways that I remedied my homesickness was to watch American movies. So this is in the early 2000s, and it is the age of DVDs and video stores. So I would go and, rent American movies, and then just to get the most out of it, I would watch all of the features on the disc, which ended up being typically the making of the film, the director's commentary, the actor's commentary, behind the scenes. So I was unwittingly getting an education in filmmaking. And it just started to influence the way I saw the world around me. Like, I was kind of started narrating my own life, and I was seeing the things that I was doing as stories that I was the star in. And, I wished I could have had a camera, on my forehead, just capturing everything, so I could then edit it down into something that I could share with people. But the technology, you could do that today. The technology wasn't there at the time. And so I just became really interested in it. And that led to a fascination and eventually obsession with documentary films. And so I just shifted to watching and renting every documentary film that I could find that was on DVD. And again, this is before documentaries blew up as an entertainment genre. And so they weren't, you could literally get to the end of it where there was nothing else really good to watch.
Because it was mainly educational.
It was yes. But there were a few that crossed the boundaries that really lit a fire inside of my creative soul. The first one probably being Grey Gardens, which is classic.
Not familiar with it. What's it about?
Well, it was made in 1975, and it's about these two women who were formerly wealthy, but living in their decrepit mansion in the Hamptons. And it was a cinema verite style, which is where the action unfolds while the camera is rolling. It's also known as fly on the wall. So we're in their lives and experiencing what I would describe as their break in reality, like the life that they thought they were living and what you saw them living in was such a contrast, and how they just interpreted everything that was happening around them and the people that came into their life, which weren't many because they were reclusive. And it just made me realize that real characters can be as fascinating as fictional ones, that there are people out there who are living lives that would be fascinating to watch and to experience from another perspective.
And so that was something that I really, really liked about learning about you was, you had this just strong passion for documentary filmmaking. And I was going to ask, what influenced your style? So now looking at this documentary and why it resonated with you, what about that informed you moving as a filmmaker forward? Because you still, you come to Motion Picture Institute, you do a stint, you win Best Picture. Was that a documentary, that film?
It was. And in fact, it was the first documentary that they allowed for a thesis film. I came here with the passion for documentary. It was never my intention to make studio films or
narrative, right?
Right. And I already had been making videos for several years by the time I got here. So I came with questions and I came with things that I wanted to learn. But I wanted to apply the cinematic approach to storytelling to documentary filmmaking. And they allowed it. And they also allowed me for my, I don't remember what you call it, but when you crew for other students, I made behind the scenes. So
you shot the BTS. Oh, that's actually really clever.
And that was the first time that they had done that. So I think I did 2 or 3. I just followed them and their journey of making their thesis films.
And so now, you make the first documentary essentially, which is really exciting to speak to the person who brought documentaries to MPI. Now you start that trend and then you leave MPI. Another thing I love to emphasize on this show is realistic job expectations, because there's a lot of people listening who are eager to find work, want to find work. And I'm sure there's a lot of documentary filmmakers right now who are at that edge. They're just at the beginning of that journey. What is your first step out of MPI? How do you start finding work in the field you're passionate about so that we can kind of give that pathway to someone else?
Well, I think it's important to recognize that documentary filmmaking isn't just for documentaries. It's not just for full-length feature films. There's also, there are documentary shorts, and there is brand work. There are brand films that are documentaries. So there are people and companies out there that will fund your projects because it aligns with who they are and what they want to represent in the world. When I was in film school, there was I think a misconception or even a stigma, now not in the culture of MPI, but just in the industry, that you were either a purist, which you were producing and directing your own films, writing, producing, and directing your own films. And then if you were doing corporate work, you were a sellout. You're no longer an artist. You're doing the bidding of a corporation. And I just never saw it that way, because any way you look at it, somebody has to pay for it. And any way you look at it, you have a client. So whether you're working at a company or in a studio, you have bosses. Those are your clients. Those are people that you answer to. If you're on your own and you're doing corporate work, your clients are your clients. And if you're an independent filmmaker, you have investors. Those are your clients. They're expecting a return on their investment. And if you're self-funding or if you're independently wealthy, you have an audience. And those are your clients because you're making something that you want to resonate with them. So any way you slice it, unless you're just making something by yourself, for yourself, and no one else is ever going to see it, you have an interested third party. And I call those clients.
Yeah, see, I agree with you. I hate that stigma of like it being a sellout work because I think there's some really compelling storytelling coming out of brands and coming out of commercials. You know, so like where I grew up in South Africa, there's some wonderful commercial companies that make incredible commercials. And they actually hire a lot of like filmmakers from outside of the country to come in and do these brand videos. And as a kid, I never understood why they would do something like that. And now as a filmmaker, I realize, oh yeah, they are trying to sell a product or sell a service, but you want to try and build that trust with the audience, the clients, right? You want to try build that relationship of, no, this is what we're doing. And like a lot of these brands are eager to hire filmmakers that can see that need, that can fulfill them and create that content that helps them get their message out there of what they provide. And you've done exactly that. You've built quite a little empire. And I was looking through some of your stuff. And I guess that's now, how did you start landing the clientele that you have? How did you start grabbing these people and providing them high quality products that help them build their businesses? When did that start? And then how did you start keeping that momentum?
Well, as you know, I have two brands. And it's funny because the brand that I just launched this year, my first client ever was a life story and legacy film. And that was years before I came to MPI. And then I moved into the corporate world. And when I was a student here, I got my first big break in brand film work. And it was by accident. You know, there are no accidents, but it was a project that I offered to do for free because I wanted to do it.
Build your resume.
Right. And my portfolio. I wanted to be able, when I was here, I got turned on to, new ways of cinematography and production. And I wanted something to show that I could do that. And I knew that there was an event coming up, a corporate event that was going to be spectacular from a visual perspective. And I knew the people who owned it. And so I asked them if they would mind if I came and shot it and made a video for myself. And as a thank you for letting me intrude, I would let them have a copy that they could use for their own marketing in any way that they wanted. And I actually, as a learning experience for me, I hired 2 graduates from NPI to accompany me on the shoot and kind of show me the ropes. That was Rob Frenette and Hyun Soo. And between the 3 of us, we got all this incredible footage. I learned a ton, and I created an amazing little film out of it that the company that I made it for had never seen their work on video before. And they were so impressed with its ability to communicate the experience because I drew people into the experience of it, not just like showing pictures of the features, but what it felt like to be there, the mystery of it. And they ordered 6 more for that year. And that paid for my film school. I had borrowed money on 3 different credit cards to go to film school. And that paid for my film school. Yeah,
the story of how much debt you were in before MPI and then the amount of debt you were in MPI, that was like listening to your commencement speech. I was like, boy, that's a different level of stress. And so, I mean, yeah, so you land one gig that you did for free just to try get your resume. You kind of prove your stripes on that set. And then that got you another 6 gigs right away.
Yeah.
I guess that just shows you like, anyone who's listening who, again, has these doubts of, can I find work? Like, how long until I get work? If you're good and you're passionate and you have a good idea, it kind of just pays for itself. At some point, you meet that right collaboration, or a brand sees your value and goes, oh, I need to get this.
Right.
And so from those 6 gigs, when did that lead you into building your own production company? And was that the catalyst? You're like, I need a production company?
I was still just operating as myself.
Independent?
Yeah. It was a few years, well, a couple of years, I guess. 2 years specifically, when I put the numbers together, that I created Paige Erlich Productions. And even that, like the name was, I had 2 other company names that I formed and dissolved because I was like always coming up with a name that I thought represented the kind of work that I wanted to do. And then I would evolve into something else and it was no longer relevant. So after doing that twice, I realized, at the end of the day, it's all coming through me. And I am positioning myself as an artist that when I work with people, they want to see themselves and their world through my lens. And I will always be the common denominator. And I will continue to evolve. So I called it Paige Erlich Productions.
And no, it works. Because, I mean, something I saw a lot as an MPI student was a lot of my classmates made production companies, like a lot of them. And I kind of resisted right away because I was like, I don't know if I want to, like, essentially when you make a company, you're making an entity. You're making a legal entity. You're essentially on paper creating like a person. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm like committed enough to an idea to give it like a title and then stick with that for the next 3, 4, 5 decades. And so I was like, I'm going to hold off until I have something more like concrete about myself, a better understanding. And so I kind of resonate with what you said there. It makes me feel better knowing that you got a lot of work first before you even had a company. I'm like, oh, okay, so I can still work independently until I'm ready to find that next stage. And then that takes me to my next question, which is, you did a residency. Is the company now you did the residency for, like, how did that come about? And how exactly was that position like structured? What were like your responsibilities? And what does a resident filmmaker do for a company?
It varies. I can talk about my own experience. I know there are, many different companies doing different kinds of things. But for me, with Kelly, they were one of my first clients under Paige Erlich Productions. And they were my biggest client at the time that they approached me to take on this role as brand storyteller and resident filmmaker. It started as brand storyteller and it evolved into and resident filmmaker because I also got to produce projects that I didn't make. And so the way it was structured was it was about half of my time. So I continued Paige Erlich Productions and doing work for other clients, but about 50% of my time was dedicated to their brand work. And it was really storytelling, and it primarily focused on film and video, but I was the internal person who was the go-to for anything that the marketing team needed. And that involved making a lot of their films and videos, strategizing, doing creative, and also working with some of the other production companies that they brought on board to make other work. So I got an opportunity to be on the client side with some very big budgets and experience, that part of it.
And so I guess that was my question, because we're just trying to understand that role. I was like, do they give you a brief like every month or so? Like, hey, this is kind of like we're looking for 3 30-second ads, 2 TikTok reels. Like, that's what I was trying to figure out, is how do they as a company utilize your skills and your time? Like, how do they structure it so they can get, I guess, the most bang for their buck, essentially?
Yeah, it varied. I think we should start a drinking game for this podcast called "It Varies and It Depends."
Okay, that sounds fun. Yeah, like a hot wings almost. Yeah, no, I guess the question is just me trying to figure out, how that position operates.
Right.
Because that's become like a more modern day thing is companies now are hiring filmmakers as resident filmmakers to stay in there, and they want their brands to be uniform and they want their content to feel like not necessarily cheap, but structured and like it has a taste to it. It has personality. And so keeping the same person on board who has those sensitivities allows you to have brand identity. It allows the brand to just enrich itself. And then when you build that relationship with a filmmaker, it just makes things cool. Like you have brands right now like Fiat. They just did a commercial and they had Spike Lee direct their ad. Like I would have never guessed Spike Lee would direct a Fiat ad, but it made me want to buy an electric Fiat because the ad was really cool. I can't afford an electric Fiat. We're always open to sponsorships. But I was like, it was a Giancarlo Esposito because he's half Italian, I believe. And so they did it together because they have history. I have no idea who in the marketing team is responsible for that decision, but it was a great decision and it made for a great ad, which now I've never considered the Fiat car, but having watched it, it's on my radar. And that's the power of having a filmmaker with a strong vision, a strong personality on your team to help grow your brand. And so that's why I was kind of trying to figure out how that worked at Kelly.
Yeah, they definitely recognized that. And because they had a marketing team of more than 80 people and everybody was doing things their own way. And they didn't have like a central, they didn't have a cohesive voice. And a lot of times they didn't know what they were buying or how to buy it. And so they weren't always getting the best value and they weren't always getting the best product. So that was one of the first things that I did was audit what they were doing and figure out, help them make some decisions about, who stays and who goes. And then it was just whenever they needed to produce some work, they would come to me first, and it would either be I consulted them on what they should do, or they would use me as the producer, director, whatever it needed to actually make the work. And sometimes that involved me. I stopped doing production a long time ago, but I still produce and direct. So I would bring in whoever the right people were, or, sometimes if it's on the other side of the world, like they're a global company. So if they needed to produce stories in Australia or Singapore or Russia, it didn't make sense to fly me and my crew out there, but I could act as, the producer and the inside producer who could find the resources and make sure that it was being done properly, well, and in alignment with their brand identity.
So your taste is very valuable to them because you're also curating a lot. You're curating a lot of their, essentially their image that goes out to the public.
Yes and no. I mean, they have a brand identity. Every brand has its own identity. So it wasn't my job to create their identity. It was my job to make sure that the work aligned with their identity.
Yeah, that makes way more sense. Okay, so yeah, because you're essentially, you're just trying to aid the rest of the marketing team, which you said over 80 people, and that's a lot to curate. I can't imagine the email chain that goes back and forth. That must be quite a lot. And
it was fun. It was fun, especially because, and this is one of the other reasons that I wanted to do it, was because I, for the most part, am a lone soldier. I'm a production company of one, and I hire contractors and artists and professionals for whatever I need for a project. But they're essentially day players, and we work together and then we separate and we all go on and do different things. So to be part of a community for an extended period of time, but still to have my freedom, gave me a great, it was a sense of community. It was a place to establish and grow and develop relationships over a long period of time, and also to sink my teeth into work. And so often we're doing films for clients, they only need one every 2 years, or, you're working together for a few months and then you part ways. So this was a more permanent situation for a few years that I really got to know people and to work together with them and to experience something more meteor, you know, to be part of a bigger picture, because I was also part of the strategy meetings, and, you know, we worked on, you know, all kinds of different areas and parts of the process that as strictly the filmmaker, I wouldn't have access to. And so it helped me also to understand what my clients are doing when I'm not, before I'm in part of the conversation.
Now, I can't imagine how that must inform your creative process, how that changes you as a filmmaker to go from like soldier army of one to being a part of a team and working with everybody, and how that informs your just everyday, like how you put projects together. I can't imagine, like I've never worked with something of that scale, but I can imagine that it does open you more to the idea of collaboration and the importance of it, and how everyone, when you work with on the same idea, everyone has the same goal, things go way smoother. So I guess my next question then is, you take the skills you have from this position and you leave. Where does Paige go right after that? Where do you go as a creative after achieving as much as you did with that position? What is the next step?
It was a soft transition because, remember, I was still operating Paige Erlich Productions and making other client work. So, and Kelly is still a client. I'm not in that role with them, but I continue. I mean, I'm doing a project with them right now, and there's always seems to be at least something going on, if not 2 projects at a time. So I continued to do what I was doing, just less of that and more of the other, and I launched a new brand.
Yes. So now, before the new brand, I just want to see, where does the Aloe Black come in? Where does that collaboration come in? How did you land such a collaboration? Because I'm a big Aloe Black fan. I love the song I Need a Dollar. That's a very popular song on my playlist. And so when I saw that you had worked with him and you sent me that email, I was like, how does a collaboration like this like wind up in your lap, essentially? Like, I assumed that after the gig of the residency, it opened up a lot of networking and you were able to get your work out there, and your work found either the agent, and then that kind of tethered that process. I was hoping you could just walk us through establishing clientele of that significance, and then just the brand relationship with it and what kind of the expectations are as a creative.
So the Aloe Black project had nothing to do with Kelly.
Gotcha.
It was not at all related to or as a result of my work with Kelly. So yeah, don't think you need to have that kind of experience in order to land that kind of client.
It is relief.
Yeah, no, it was a referral.
Wow.
And it was a referral from another
That's amazing.
artist. Yeah. So one of my specialties and one of my favorite things to do is sizzle reels for speakers, artists, thought leaders, and trailblazers. And that genre, I guess, or that type of work, it started with one, and it was, again, a referral. All my business has been by referral. So
the power of word of mouth, guys. Be nice, be kind, show up on time, be productive, deliver what you promise. Like, these are all things I think we can attribute to being successful.
yes, do great work, because you do great work, somebody else is going to see it and ask them, who did that? And that's exactly how my sizzle reel, I don't even know what to call it.
No, sizzle reel is perfect, yeah.
Sizzle reel specialty came to be. You know, it started with one speaker, and then somebody saw it and said, who did that? And he referred the next guy and the next guy, and he referred Aloe.
And then, so how the Aloe project was established, like, so when I looked at the video, did you just take clips over his career and edit that together? Or how much photography did you do, and how was that done?
I did none. And that's often the case with sizzle reels, because it is a montage or compilation of work that they have already done. It's to highlight who they are and what they do. So there is sometimes shooting, you know, maybe you're doing an interview, or if there is a new piece of content that they haven't got shot professionally yet, you can go out and do that. But in his case, you know, this is 20 years of work that we needed to condense down into a few minutes. And there is a process that goes into it. It starts with, first of all, is understanding the objective. And that's the first question that I ask any client is, what's the objective? Why are we making this film? And then I take them through a process of developing keywords, which is we answer 5 questions. So we're looking for 5 keywords or phrases that are going to represent the creative true north for the film.
I like that a lot.
And for something like a sizzle reel, so there's always, no matter what kind of film we're making, 3 keywords that they all have in common is audience, emotion, and action. So who are we talking to? How do we want them to feel as a result of watching this film, and what action do we want them to take at the end? And then for a sizzle reel, additionally, we want to know what's the benefit and what is the value, which are often confused because there is a lot of overlap. But the benefit is like what you get, and then the value is what difference does that make once you have it. So once we know that, that serves as a creative filter that we use for all decisions going forward. And because there's often things that, you could go one of 2 ways. And if you're not sure which one is going to best serve the objective, then you can always go back to your keywords.
Yes, that was actually my next question, is how you measure the impact of success of a project or a documentary, or in this case, a brand film or a sizzle reel. Like how, I'm assuming, like just as you said, it's if you deliver what they're expecting, and in some cases exceed expectation, but is there like a personal like fulfillment, or is it like sense of accomplishment you feel when a project gets done? Is there like something that you're like, okay, I really nailed that? And what is that feeling? Like what gives you that feeling essentially?
It varies.
Yes, the drinking game.
But absolutely. I mean, there's a couple things in what you said. One, like how do you measure the success? And that goes back to the objective. And it varies, so for a sizzle reel, for a speaker, for example, they want to book gigs. And it's usually they're making a new reel when they want to increase their fee. So did they do that? Right? If it's a film for a fundraising or a nonprofit, and they're going to play it at their gala, and that's their annual fundraising gala, they have a specific goal. Did they raise the money? And then about the feeling that I get and the satisfaction of finishing something. I mean, first of all, I fall in love with all of my clients. That's something that I do intentionally, and that happens automatically because it's part of the art that I produce. It has to come from love. And so when I love it, I know it's ready. And when I can watch it all the way through without wanting to change anything, then I know it's ready. And I'm not saying it's ready to deliver, then it's ready to show other people.
I think it's like a wonderful, wonderful testimony. Yeah, you do need to love the work that you do. And it goes back to what you said in the beginning about the stigma of people like kind of like looking down on this, like, it's not narrative, it's not cinema. I'm like, no, you can love this. It can be very gratifying. I spoke to someone recently who's also an MPI grad who does nonprofit video work. And he said like, it's the most fulfilling work he's ever done. And he's worked with incredible clients as well. I'm like, there's something beautiful about doing a project and then there's a positive impact afterwards. Like you can see a change in a community. You can see like an accomplishment of like a foundation reaching their milestone. There is something wonderful about you as a creative using your skills and just being able to achieve something that brings positive change into others' lives. There's something fulfilling about that. And I love speaking to people like this, like people like you who do work like this, because I just think it broadens the horizon for a lot of people listening who aren't necessarily filmmakers in the traditional sense. They don't see themselves fitting in like a studio system, making independent movies, writing screenplays, but they love cameras, they love the equipment, and they love storytelling. And stuff like documentary filmmaking and what you do with your company, it's another avenue, and it can be profitable. I mean, yeah, you cleared all your debt, so it can work, guys. Like, you can find work like this. There is unfortunately downsides to everything, and that's my next question. Is again, just as informative as I want to be about the positives, I also kind of air caution to things that can be avoided. So, like, what are the biggest challenges you find when you go into projects, and how do you overcome them? What are the most common ones?
The most common challenges so we're talking about in producing something or in being in business?
So let's do just in business, just in general, like working with clients and stuff. What are like the biggest challenges you find where you're like, okay, I got to try and find a solution to this sort of thing?
Working with clients, one of the biggest challenges is that they just need an education. They sometimes come with a preconceived notion of what is going to persuade people, and they often think that those are the features and benefits of whatever it is that they do or who they are. And I have to help them understand that features, benefits, facts, and figures don't move the needle, and they don't persuade, and it's not compelling, because people make decisions emotionally and then they justify them rationally with logic and reasons. So you have to lead with emotion. And that's a big leap for a lot of people to take who are new to this medium. And I think I've won all of those. You know, if you want to look at a battle.
No, I mean, so again, like the same guy I spoke to said, like, what he does is he gives a questionnaire before he even engages with the client. And when he does, it has to be face to face. But when they reach out to him, he sends them a questionnaire. And I thought that was really clever. That's a fun way of seeing where the client's like understanding is on the subject of what they're looking for. You know, like, what do they want voiceover? Do they want drone shots? Like, it just kind of gets out that first 10, 15-minute conversation with the client down on paper. So when you get in, you go straight to like the meaty, like 20-minute conversation off all those details. I guess I was wondering, like, it seems you do kind of the same thing. You're trying to like assess where the client's coming from, what they understand, and then how you can use that to deliver what they want. And more so above what they want, what they need but don't know because they're just uninformed.
Right.
And so I guess my next thing is with producing, what are the biggest challenges you find as a producer when you're actually on the project and you're trying to make things happen? And then how do you overcome those challenges?
There's like client challenges, and then there's me challenges.
I want to see the me challenges.
The me challenges are that I see so much potential in a story, and I just want to make a bigger project than we have time and money for.
So it's the same. Okay, good. Everyone suffers from the same thing. I'm glad.
Yeah.
So then how do you, I guess then, okay, so if you know you're limited, what do you do in that situation? Because I've met people who get utterly defeated and then just kind of like, you know, just kind of marry through the whole process because they're like, it'll never be exactly what I want it to be. And then there's people who I've met who, like myself, are like, okay, where there's an obstacle, there's an opportunity. Now I have to try use the difficulty. I got to take this thing and re-engineer it because, and this may be a very, I guess, hubris way of thinking about it, but I'm like, the universe has designed it to be this way for a reason. I must comply with the universe. Is that kind of like the rationale that you also have when you're faced with those obstacles?
I like your yes and approach. And so what I do, first of all, is I go back to the keywords and I make the film that we need to make. And then for additional opportunities that are there, I often offer them as an add-on. Like we could also do, so we're going to make, let's say, a 3-minute film that, you know, tells the story that we designed, but we also happen to capture this and that, and we could spin this, and we could do some shorter pieces, or, you know, we could do an entirely different spin on it. So,
no, I like that. It's clever. It's a good way to also like expand on the work you can be doing. That's a nice way of like creating potentially more work. You know, if they're
Yeah.
like, okay, not right now, we want to see how this does. And then if they love the work that you do, they might be like, okay, now we definitely want to bring Paige back because she's going to have way better ideas.
And it also gives them more bang for their buck. Yes, they have to pay more to produce more work, but they don't have to pay for the production that was already done. We essentially have this stuff in the can. It's now like, can we make something else out of it?
Awesome. And I guess like winding down now, what is advice you would give to young filmmakers such as yourself and people who are just starting their journey, people who are doing documentary filmmaking, people who want to get into brand work? I would love to just give you the stage. Just kind of walk us through the advice you'd give somebody who's just about to take that first step, things to consider, things to maybe avoid, and just overall advice as like a mentor.
The biggest thing is to start.
Perfect. Wrap it up. No, I love that. That's fair enough. That's fair enough. Yeah, just start.
And we live in a world that is full of information, education, knowledge, resources, hacks, how to, like it's very easy to get stuck in either analysis paralysis or overwhelm or thinking
I like that. Analysis paralysis. I've never heard that before. That's really nice. I like that.
Or that there's a right way to do it. And there isn't. There is the way that you do it, and then you'll sit in this chair and tell your story. So start. And where you should start is on something that interests you and something that you have access to. Because whatever you're making, you're going to spend a lot of time with. You're not only like planning it, and then you're shooting it, and then you're in post-production with it. So, for every hour that you sit down with a person, you're spending days with them in the edit suite. And, all of the planning that goes into it and the thinking and the collaborating and figuring things out and working through challenges. And it is, you are immersed in the subject. So pick something that interests you, that you want to spend time with. Like, how do you want to spend your day? What do you want to spend your day thinking about, working on? And also people that you like, people that you want to spend time with, that you want to give a platform to. Because you are creating art for them, about them. And it's something that I learned like early in my speaker, in my sizzle reel career, that I don't make them all. I don't make everyone that comes to me, I don't agree to make them all, because I have to really resonate with who they are and what they're up to in order for me to lend my lens to their work. So it should be something that you believe in. It should be, and I don't mean to sound like, again, like you said, hubris or egotistical, but it's more a matter of alignment. It's a matter of doing things that are true to you, that feel authentic to you, that resonate with you, that make your heart sing. Because if they don't, you're not going to make good work. So choose subjects that you're interested in, that you have access to, because you got to be able to get in to actually get the content out of it. And just start. And I don't care where you are, you have the resource. If you have a phone, if you have a smartphone, and you live within driving distance of any place of commerce, you have the resources and you have the opportunities that you need to start.
I love it. I guess the last thing I want to just touch on before we leave is you've started a new journey now, and it's really, really exciting because it's something that I personally, I told you in our first conversation, I'm in the process of doing for my own family, and that is legacy films. I would love for you to just kind of tell us what Skywrite Studios is, what your plan is with it, and just overall just the importance of what a service like that is.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about it. I'm very excited about it. Tagging on to the last thing we talked about, it's something that is very near and dear to my heart, that I believe is very important, and that is preserving the stories of families. So we make life story and family legacy films so people can preserve their stories and pass down their wisdom and their values to future generations, so that they can continue to build on the foundation that they've laid for them.
If you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it, right?
Right. And why should your children and your children's children have to make the same mistakes that you made? You know, you have arrived at this place in your life that was you're standing on the shoulders of the people who came before you. And if the stories and the journeys and the lessons are not documented, they're lost in 3 generations, which you know from your own experience because you know quite a bit about your parents, less about your grandparents, and little to nothing about your great-grandparents.
It's an unfortunate truth, yeah.
And, you know, just think about, you know, what's in 3 generations, it's going to be the same situation. And we are also a nation of immigrants. And once you leave the country that you originate from, it's even harder to reconnect with your roots. And so imagine, you know, you might be first, second, third generation here in this country. In 2, 3 generations, they're going to have no idea how they were able to enjoy the life that they now lead, what led to that, and little things that maybe are part of their family culture that they're just not even aware. They think everybody's like that, but no, that was something that was passed down in some way that was maybe never given a voice to. So this is a way to keep the important things alive.
Paige, you're the best. I appreciate you coming in today, and I appreciate you sharing all your wisdom. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed being here.
Well, that was Let's Talk Motion Picture. This podcast is brought to you by Motion Picture Institute, a film school located in Troy, Michigan. If you'd like to know more about our extensive 1-year filmmaking program, please check out the website at motionpicture.edu and schedule a tour today.